responses to hate speech on campus could be a little bolder. There was just kind of like back-to-back incidences of graffiti in the bathrooms of just anti-trans messages. The school put out a notice saying, "Oh, there was graffiti found. We don't tolerate hate." What are you doing besides just a mass email out?
Post up more pride flags. There is a lot of things that happen on campus that students don't really know about. There is some like scary bigoted backlash across Los Rios in general. Like we have somebody who for years, they have dedicated throughout years to go and spray paint Nazi symbols all throughout the campuses because they want to keep us in fear and they want us to shut up essentially. But we can't let that happen, you know? And so that's why I say more pride flags.
I want to believe that we can trust and feel safe with professors, and pronouns is such a small gesture that you can do to show respect and show that you can trust your professor, especially when they take a moment to pause everybody. We misgendered someone in this moment, we got the pronoun wrong, mistakes happen, let's correct this and then we can move forward. I'd like to see that happen more.
It's deeply important to me. Fully staffed and funded would be having multiple student workers and faculty advisors. Fully funded would mean being able to put on events for queer students, like a queer prom, food drives, clothing drives, craft opportunities, other ways to build community within the community college.
One more thing we should do is, I wouldn't say that just applies to colleges, I would say like the state of California in general should provide housing relief funds for trans and queer youth who maybe live in households that aren't accepting of who they are, who may be abusive or maybe even kick them out. So we don't have any more homeless trans people or homeless queer people, you know. It's really important so that way they can be safe.
Give us money. I mean, genuinely, that's ultimately it. The school doesn't have a lot of scholarships that are queer specific, if any. My partner has to change their name twice because they were adopted. They have a birth name and they have a name that it was not legally changed to, but they've been called their whole life. So they have to go through 2 different name changes. That's an incredible cost. Yeah, I mean, we have a legal studies program, find the like fee waivers and things like that, and then offering resources to those who don't qualify for fee waivers.
Making being LGBTQ plus more visible, that would send a much stronger message. Support the students through events.
I guess having like a queer flag or something like that basically says, you know, you're safe talking to somebody, I think is a good nonverbal way of saying, hey, you're in a safe space. I really do appreciate those stickers and flyers that are in front of like offices that say this is a safe space.
Encourage professors to speak out on trans issues, on queer issues. However, if there's a queer student or a minority student, disabled student, whatever, that makes a huge difference. So I think encouraging staff to have open and honest conversations at the beginning of the semester and being supportive and doing training on staff.
It'd be really cool for the school to have like a drag show. There's people that are questioning out there, having things put out there to celebrate and liberate people would be really cool.
So I took the queer studies class. I really loved the class. I wish we could do a part 2. I wish we could dive in more. I wish there was a class where we could talk about the current political climate and how it's impacting BIPOC and queer communities.
I think that's really what people need and want the most, is to feel seen and heard and known. I think that's a deep want. It should also just be more so infused in regular curriculum, especially really in classes that are more so general ed. It becomes very normal, and with that normalcy, you start to shift the collective, you start to shift the culture. That has a huge positive impact to people who do not identify with that community.
A little bit more queer staff. I know at Pride Center. We have a therapist who is queer affirming. I think we have one queer affirming counselor. I would say they would probably need 3 queer affirming counselors, 2 therapists.
Having a mental health counselor who understands the nuances of navigating queerness is so important. If you're having marital problems, you go to a counselor who specializes in that, right? You're not going to go to a counselor whose primary focus is ADHD. Why on earth wouldn't I want a counselor who understands my specific needs, understands my experiences, never mind my needs? You can't help my future if you don't understand my past.
We should have more bathrooms built for that are inclusive, not just men and women, but we don't have a lot of those. They're not in like every single building. They're only in certain select buildings, and there's always the parts of campus that nobody is at.
Working in the Pride Center, I hear students talk about how they don't drink any water on campus all day, and they don't eat, they don't drink, so that they don't have to use the bathroom because they cannot always get to the gender neutral bathroom. Having more gender neutral bathrooms accessible, it would make things safer for trans people.
Who's consulted when determining what bathrooms are in a building? Has anyone said, hey, how many people on this campus might support all gender bathroom? Has anyone asked the queers how they would feel about that? Because that's not just a trans issue, right? It's people who don't fit into the binary. Very masculine women, that's very effeminate men. It's not just a trans problem, it's a people problem. I don't think that anyone outside of the Pride Center is asking what the queers think. And I think this applies across the board to all of the at-risk oppressed groups, right? There's no shortage of students. They don't ask us.
There are very few buildings that have gender-neutral bathrooms, and they are relatively far apart on campus or hard to find. There are no locker rooms that are trans inclusive in any capacity. It's very difficult to use the restroom in the middle of a course if you have to get up and leave the classroom because there's nowhere for you to go where you feel comfortable or safe. I can't take any of the gym courses here unless I want to go home immediately afterwards. It's not safe for me to use showers in a non-trans inclusive locker room. It's incredibly uncomfortable, incredibly awkward, and potentially dangerous. Something I guess I have to deal with, which doesn't seem particularly acceptable for an entire section of the curriculum to be relatively inaccessible to an entire group of people.
I think that they should talk to queer faculty and queer students about what is right, what the right actions and steps to take, so they don't do anything that's misguided or ignorant and ruin the efforts completely because they didn't reach out to the folks they need to be talking to. I think that's really important, having a seat at the table. Los Rios stands with its queer and BIPOC faculty, staff, admin, students, whomever, that it stands alongside of them and that it supports them, whoever works for the district, that they are important, they're supported, and that this is a home for them.
A lot of people don't have an idea of how much our community is actually struggling. These are young people who have been abandoned by their families, who do not have the life skills and resources that are needed because nobody taught them. It's really easy to say gay rights, look, we've made so much progress, but we haven't made progress for everyone within our community. Housing resources like shelters for LGBTQ+ people. I would say just invest in LGBTQ+ people.